Today, we're going to be speaking with George Conway, lawyer, activist, co-host of the Bulwark's George Conway Explains It All, and also director of the new political action committee, the Anti-Psychopath PAC, which aims to highlight the existential threat that Donald Trump poses to the U.S. George, it's really great to have you on. You know, my audience, I'm sure, has been aware of you for a while. Politically, you are now an independent. You are a lifelong Republican. Are you still a conservative guy when it comes to abortion and taxes and foreign policy?
Well, it's hard, these labels of conservative and liberal are getting very mushy these days. And I think that it doesn't capture all the nuance. On conservatism, let's take foreign policy. I think now the people who are actually sensible on foreign policy are the Democrats. I believe in strong national defense. I believe in our strong alliances. And the people who are running the Republican Party, the two nominees, basically support Russia's national interest and not ours. So I don't think my views on foreign policy have changed. I think they're, over the last 25 years, I think there is a consensus that has evolved that's relatively stable that is a bipartisan consensus that I think as much captures the conservatism of my youth, the Reaganism of my youth, than it does the anti-war nature of the 60s or the anti-Americanism of the modern right. So, I mean, that's a complex answer for that one. On economics, yeah, I think generally speaking, not in every single case, less government is better than more, because you don't want too powerful a government because you may not like the next government. CEG Project 2025. I think people expect too much from government. I think they expect it to solve all of their problems. I think they expect it to solve all of the things they perceive at any given moment to be social ills. And I think that was a disease of liberalism in the 60s and 70s when I came of political age, and now it's horrible metastasis in the right, where they basically think they can legislate everything that they don't like in other people out of existence. And I'm not that kind of, that's not conservatism to me. Now, in terms of abortion, I have a view that makes everybody unhappy. Okay, I'm a conservative. I'm a judicial conservative in the sense that basically I think that the Constitution should be interpreted in accordance with its terms. It's a written document. Now, I don't believe in some kind of mechanistic, infallible originalism that would say that, oh, well, let's see, in order to figure out whether this particular gun regulation is constitutional under the Second Amendment, we have to look very specifically at the statutes that were passed in Maryland in 1645. I don't believe in that. I do think that you do have to have some tie into the meaning, the original meaning of language, that it has historical context. And that if you depart from that and you start deciding, hey, well, I have 5 votes for this, I have 5 votes for that, and liberals have done this and conservatives have done this, I don't think that's how you do it. You have to actually ground your interpretation of the Constitution in the text and its structure. And there are liberals who actually agree with me on this. Akhil Amar of Yale Law School, and I think to some extent, Justice Kagan has become a very good originalist in certain ways. It may be that we come out with different answers on a particular case, but the fact of the matter is, if we're using the same kind of framework to look at the Constitution, we are at least speaking the same language, and we can work together to try to get the right answer, even if we disagree. Now, in terms of the substance of abortion, I thought Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided because of the very reasons that I thought. On the other hand, I don't think you can overrule a precedent that impacts so many people after 50 years. The time to overrule that was in 1989. On terms of the actual legislative merits, if I were a legislator, I would probably vote for something somewhere in between what the Western Europeans have as a regime, which is basically, early term abortions are prohibited or highly restricted, although there are many exceptions. And something somewhere between that and Roe v. Wade, which is basically was pretty much the first 2 trimesters. I mean, how I draw that exact line, I'd want to think about it and discuss it with experts, and it's something that should have been, I think, subject of public and legislative debate in the 70s when the reform movement, abortion reform movement, was actually having some great successes, as Justice Ginsburg points out in an article in 1990, where she basically said that Roe went too far because it basically eliminated public discussion. People didn't have to think about the issue, and they started taking sides mindlessly. I mean, abortion, I'm not going to say it's complex because everybody gets real hard, but it's fraught. It's hard. It's hard because at some point you do have a human life laid in, and the question is when. But at the same time, you're always affecting, women's autonomy and health. This is not a black and white issue, and it's something that we need to think about and weigh and discuss rationally. It was something that judges couldn't really do. From sitting from afar and trying to craft. They essentially wrote a statute, which is why they got into trouble, and this is why, I think if we had just sort of proceeded the way I think Justice Ginsburg wrote that we should have, basically is like maybe the Supreme Court should have just struck down the Texas law without explaining, but creating a statutory framework that resolves every case. Which is what the Supreme Court, by the way, did in the immunity case, where they tried to basically resolve everything in the future, and they up. So that's my, I have a very nuanced perspective on some of that.
That's a good framework.
It's enough to piss off everybody. So that's so I'm homeless. I'm political.
In that context, the part that hasn't changed over the last few years is that you think Trump is bad news and he shouldn't go anywhere near the Oval Office. You've launched the Anti-Psychopath PAC. Yes, you're doing ad buys that include billboards, essentially pointing out this guy is a pathological liar. He's a malignant narcissist. He's completely unfit. First question, do you think that Joe Biden stepping aside makes the case against Trump clearer, or does it muddle it?
I think it makes it clearer, because I think one of the things that the Trump people love to do is that when they are accused of X and are guilty of X, they like to accuse the other side of X. Mm-hmm. Okay, now here, I mean, that's like the Biden crime family, right? I mean, all the BS about Hunter's laptop, crazy Nancy, it's all projection on their part. But now, I mean, and they were getting away. Let's leave apart the malignant narcissism that we're probably going to be talking about. Even on the simple question of whether or not there was age-related cognitive decline in either of the candidates, there was a double standard being applied. Yes. I mean, Joe Biden, okay, he's old. We get that. He probably needs more sleep than he used to. He probably, he's clearly got these spinal or back issues that make him look like he shuffles. He forgets, I forget names. I forget names myself. I'm 60. And I sometimes misstate words. We all do that. But Donald Trump does it as much, if not more, than Joe Biden. And somehow we just did not hear a lot about that. We didn't have the press feeding frenzy that we had for Joe Biden because of the fact that everybody's so used to Donald Trump doing it. Now that he's out of the race, now that Biden is out of the race, there's no one else to focus on about Trump. And we should appreciate and thank the Republicans and Donald Trump for raising mental health, the mental capacity, mental acuity as an issue, because the only person whose mental acuity can be called into question now, who's running a major party candidate for president, is Donald Trump. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think it brings singular clarity to what the problem is. And I think it's going to basically clear the way for making these points that I think have not sufficiently been made by people over the years about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I sort of jokingly on Sunday tweeted something like, does America really need the oldest presidential nominee in history at this point, or something like that? It was a complete joke, but yesterday, Dana Perino on Fox News seemed furious about the fact that now there are people talking about Trump's age and being the oldest nominee. It sort of does seem to have struck a nerve, and it seems like they do actually see it as a potential liability in this race.
It is. I mean, basically now the emperor had no clothes to start with, but now he's standing out there naked by himself, and it's not a pretty sight. And that's what we're going to be seeing more of him. It also dovetails with something else that has worked to Trump's advantage over the last 4 years, since basically January 6, 2021, he was deplatformed on Twitter. He was deplatformed off of Facebook and all these other places. And after he went back to Mar-a-Lago with his stolen documents, we didn't hear much from him. We didn't see as much from him. And that's been to his advantage. Even the trial that was held in Manhattan, where he was convicted on 34 counts, helped him because it took him off. We didn't see him talking. A lot of people didn't see, I mean, we did, you and I did, I'm sure, but a lot of people didn't see him talking about sharks and electrocution and Hannibal Lecter, and now they do. And there's only one candidate who's going to be talking about sharks and electrocution and Hannibal Lecter. And it's just like, he's his own worst enemy. It's like remember in 2020, he loved going out and holding these 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock press briefings because, it was great for his narcissistic ego to be able to boss and all that. He loved that. And those press briefings killed him to the point where his aides begged him to stop, especially after he, decided that Clorox would be a great treatment for COVID. So, Biden's departure from the race, the fact that people are now starting to engage in the race, and the fact that he's got this spotlight to himself, and the fact that he is a narcissist who wants to have the spotlight on him, even though whoever the spotlight is on is going to lose this election, as he did in 2020 and as Hillary did in 2016. Whoever this election becomes about is going to lose, but he wants it to be about him because he wants everything to be about him. So all of these factors together, I think, just serendipitously or otherwise, it makes it a really ripe moment to talk about Donald Trump's mental capacity and his mental health issues.
So you're doing the billboards. These are not cheap billboards. What's the strategy around location?
Well, look, I mean, obviously we're going to do some. We have this is a multifaceted PAC. We have multiple audiences. And, maybe political consultants, real political consultants, of which I'm not, I'm just a lawyer, may think that, well, you can't really do all those things. But here are the objects. One is we want to explain to the public what these conditions are: the malignant narcissism, or how you would, antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, malignant narcissism, all these concepts which overlap. We want to explain to them what these are and how they apply to Trump. Secondly, is we want to explain why they're dangerous in a political leader, and in particular Trump. The third is we want to shame and embarrass the press and nudge the press into finally talking about this, because I think the reason why Trump, one of the reasons why, an important reason why Trump has been so normalized and why there was this double standard between Trump and Biden is because we don't talk about these mental health issues as they affect Donald Trump, because for a lot of different reasons, we're afraid it's people get squeamish when they talk about mental health, and journalists don't feel like they're experts in it, and you've got the Goldwater rule. So there are a bunch of different reasons going on here why it hasn't happened and needs to happen. And one of the effects of it not happening, of the press not talking about him in pathological terms, is people don't understand how it is that Trump presents such a danger. The press normalizes Trump, when in fact his psychological condition explains his racism, his misogyny, his authoritarianism, his criminality. Everything about him comes down to his psychological condition. And finally, the fourth object of the PAC is really to demonstrate in kind of a lab experiment kind of way, Trump as a malignant narcissist and as an unwell human being. He's going to be saying things from now until November that will illustrate his narcissistic sociopathy. He always has. He's done it in the past. I mean, you could just do it on January 6th alone, but he will continue to do that. And then, we are going to get under his skin, frankly. And he will, one of the things that you can point to about characteristics of narcissistic sociopaths is that they don't take criticism very well.
They do not. They do not.
And so those are the four objects, and we're going to do a mix of things, and we're going to have a lot of pitches in our portfolio, or whatever you call it, in our repertoire. That's what you would call pitches. And we're going to throw them at different times in different ways. And I think it's going to be interesting.
George, in the limited time we have left, what do you think about the early lines of attack against Kamala Harris, which in order chronologically over the last 4 days have been, she cackles when she laughs, she doesn't have biological children, and she's the DEI candidate? Do you think, if you were advising them, how would you evaluate these lines of attack, or how might you attack her?
Advising which of them?
Trump.
Trump, I'd say keep doing that. That's good stuff. Really great. Nice
If
job.
you actually wanted to help them, I guess
about,
is what I mean.
Also talk about, you know, her love life when she was in her 20s. Absolutely.
Right.
All of that. That's great stuff. Nice job. You guys are stable geniuses. That's my no, but I mean, you know, it's ridiculous. It's all nonsense. I mean, the fact of the matter is, yeah, she cackles because she has a sense of humor. She's actually funny. Okay, she has a real sense of humor. Donald Trump does not have a sense of humor. He thinks he doesn't know. You ever see him actually laugh? He doesn't actually understand humor
I
because
don't know that he understands jokes.
right, he can't understand jokes. And I think that to me, it relates to his sociopathy. In order to be able to understand jokes, you have to understand irony, and you have to understand how people other than yourself who don't exist in Donald Trump's brain, understand and perceive things. So you see him telling something that gets a laugh, and he kind of seems pleased that there's a laugh, but he doesn't really understand what it is that causes the laugh. The only thing he thinks really humor is mocking other people. He thinks that he confuses mockery with humor. And while mockery can be a subset of humor, it doesn't, you know, it's not, you know, denigrating people isn't really all that funny if there's no subtlety to it, or no angle to it, and no irony to it. So he doesn't really have a sense of humor, and Kamala Harris does. She's fun. She's going to be fun, and you know, there's going to be the voter registration of young people apparently just went through the roof over the last few days. I think, you know, America is ready for. I like the fact that people are saying she's young, because I'm 60, she's 58, and everybody says she makes me feel great. Another reason. So I think, you know, I think she's going to have that advantage. I think also the DEI stuff. Well, I tweeted something out today through the PAC that said, no, the real DEI candidate here is Donald Trump, because he's deranged, he's egomaniacal, and he's incompetent. That's the DEI candidate. He's the real DEI candidate in this election. So I hope maybe the campaign will take that on. I kind of like that slogan.
Maybe they will, and we will be following the Anti-Psychopath PAC. You can also find George Conway as co-host of the Bulwarks. George Conway Explains It All. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, David.